It's time for Baby and Toddler Instructions with host Blythe Lipman. Blythe is a nationally renowned infant and toddler expert who has over 30 years' experience helping moms and dads regain their sanity, teaching them how to survive, and giving them the confidence they need to be the best parents ever. From sleeping to crying to potty training to choosing a preschool and so much more. If you're a parent, Baby and Toddler Instructions is the show you've been looking for. Now here's your host, Blythe Lipman.
Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever in the world you might be. Thanks so much for tuning in to Baby and Toddler Instructions. I'm hoping you all had a wonderful holiday weekend to end the summer. It went so quickly. I just wrote a blog post on my site, mybestparentingadvice.com, called Say Goodbye and Please Don't Cry. It's all about toddlers and separation anxiety. And with school starting for many little toddlers, sometimes they just won't let go of your leg. And what are you supposed to do? Because so many times that G word comes into play. I guess I have to say it, guilt. So anyway, take a look at my post, Say Goodbye and Please Don't Cry, on mybestparentingadvice.com. I have some helpful tips because I went through this. I remember with my son, it was really funny because every day I dropped him off, this was years ago, he would scream and hold on to my leg, and I would leave, and we didn't have cell phones. I'm not that ancient, but I didn't have one, and I would go and find a phone and call his teacher and say, "How's Andrew?" And she'd say, "He's fine. He's playing with Matchbox cars." So it got to the point where we'd get in the car and I'd say, "Okay, Andrew, showtime," because he was doing it. You know, he was sad, but also he was a little toddler. Anyway, that's not what the show is about today. Today is September 9th, 9/9/15, and the show is live. So if you have any questions or comments for me or my guests during the show, please call us at 877-864-4869. It's going to be such a great show. My guest, Richard Rende, the author of Raising Can-Do Kids, Giving Children the Tools to Thrive in a Fast-Changing World, is going to be with us in just a bit. First of all, there were three recalls this week. IKEA recalled crib mattresses again. They're called the Visa Spelevink, Spelevink. The crib mattresses failed to meet the federal open flame standard for mattresses, posing a fire hazard. I thought we got finished with that, with the fire hazards. Anyway, so that's from IKEA. Also, Imagination Books recalled pink giraffe animal purses. The red paint on the zipper contains excessive levels of lead, violating the paint standard. And I saw this morning Kraft expand their voluntary recall of wrapped American slices. You know, so many of us give our kids pieces of cheese when they're just first starting to eat, you know, solid foods, and it's a great thing to send to school because it's easy and it's wrapped anyway. If you go to the Kraft site, and I will put this on my website as well, you will see it says that the manufacturing codes of the wrapped slices, due to the possibility of a thin strip of the individual packaging film, may adhere to the slice, causing a choking hazard. So, you know, we need to keep our little ones safe, and if you do give them that cheese, you know, check it. Make sure the paper's off. In fact, it would be a great idea if you're going to put it in their lunchbox, unwrap it and wrap it in something else, or put it in one of those great Tupperwares that, you know, is the shape of a sandwich, so you don't even have to worry about that. Anyway, I will put all those recalls on my site, mybestparentingadvice.com, and I have a whole page, so whenever you buy something, even if you're in a resale store, and there's some great items in the resales for little ones. I know one resale store here, they will not take anything unless they've checked the recall list, and they've called the company if they can't find it. So, you know, ask the store if you're going to go get something, and go to my website. So let's see, what else do we have today? Before I welcome my guest, I had to talk a little bit about this because it is so darn scary. We had a terrible thing happen in Arizona, I believe last week. A mother drowned her twin 2-year-old sons in a bathtub. And it's terrible because she said that She confessed to killing the children because nobody loved them and nobody loved her. Now, you know what? These kids are so cute. And she had a third one, and she was going to try to do the same thing. And Grandma, thank goodness, stepped in. And hopefully, this woman is now probably going to be charged with manslaughter. But, she was sick, and she couldn't deal with it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that, you know what, I don't want to be a downer on today's show. I do love doing my show, but I'm bringing this up because a couple things. First of all, we want to keep our children safe. When you have a baby, and especially twins, it's such a lifestyle change, and sometimes you just can't deal with it. So if you're having a day, and we all have days, please don't be afraid to ask for help. Your partner, your husband, your friend, just say, you know what, I just need an hour of peace. And if you think you're having postpartum depression, certainly make sure you check with your pediatrician, your OBGYN. Also, if you cannot get some help and your baby is just making you bonkers, put him or her in the crib. It's okay to put them in the safe space and walk away, open the door, take a couple breaths. You know what? But don't ever be afraid to admit that you're having a bad day and it's so tough to deal with it. It's okay. We all have them. We want to keep our little ones safe. So I have a chapter in my book, Help, My Baby Came Without Instructions, and More Help, My Baby Came Without Instructions, since we were talking about bath time. If you're a new parent and you're going to give your baby a bath, make sure you have everything with you before you start. The diapers, the towel, the soap, the cream, whatever it is you're going to use. Not the cell phone. You can have it near there. God forbid there's an emergency. You know what? Not your computer. When it's bath time, it's a great time to bond with your little one. And if the phone rings, if the doorbell rings, I don't care what happens. When you're giving your little one a bath, that's what you need to concentrate on. And you also need to concentrate on having fun. We hear this all the time. I have a beautiful little grandson, and he's going to be 4 months old, and he loves his bath. He kicks water everywhere, and I get it on my face, and it's all over the place. And it is the most fun. So use that as a wonderful bonding time. Just make sure you have everything with you, and make sure you have 2 diapers, because you never know what's going to happen when you take one off. So anyway, that's my tip for my books. And I have another thing I wanted to share with you, and I would love to know your opinion. Everybody's different. Every baby's different. Every family has the right to choose what they want to do. But I have to just say this kind of struck a chord with me because of our society. It says gung-ho parents in the U.S. are naming their kids after weapons and guns. More children are being given names related to guns, knives, historical warriors, goddesses, macho movie stars, names such as Danger, Arrow, Rebel, Pistol, Arson, Magnum, Shooter, Caliber, Remington, Ruger, Wesson. Anyway, this is becoming a trend lately. It said 900 boys were Archer last year, and many baby girls were named Arrow. You can name your child anything you want, but I do have to say, and especially from personal, my name is Blythe, and not that I was named after a gun, but I had a hard time with my name growing up. It was weird. I wanted to be everybody else's name, Sue and Debbie, and, people would say Blythe, what is that? And they couldn't pronounce it right. And when you're getting ready to decide what to name your little one, think about the future, because they have to go through school. Unfortunately, we've had bullying issues. Make sure they can pronounce it, and there's not too many letters. Think ahead. Again, it's personal. You can name a baby whatever you like, but they have to live with it for 18 years for the rest of their life. If they want to change it when they get to be adults, that's okay. But I wanted to bring that up because I thought, wow, it was tough for me. So a lot of kids have it tough growing up too. Anyway, that's why we have my wonderful guest today. Let me tell you a little bit about him before the break, and maybe we'll have time to say hello. So, raising kids, it's a task that can be fun and exciting, and boy, can it be challenging sometimes. No matter what age. My wonderful guest this morning is Richard Rende, Ph.D. He's a researcher and a thought leader in developmental science and founder and director of Social Behaviors Research Applications. As a research professor at Alpert Medical School of Brown University, he held many grants which is so wonderful. Rende offers a trusted, authoritative voice on parenting and child development via popular writings, lectures, books, and services as a consultant to the public and private sector. And he wrote this wonderful book, which has, I didn't turn down the pages. This is a hard copy, and it's beautiful. And not that I turn down pages a lot. I have so many bookmarks in here. The book's called Raising Can-Do Kids, Giving Children the Tools to Thrive in a Fast-Changing World. He and his co-author, Jen Prozac, wrote this book, and I think every parent ought to read it because, we have these little babies, and we think we're going to raise them a certain way, and we think we're going to do certain things, and then all of a sudden it doesn't quite turn out that way because you've never been a parent before, and the baby doesn't do what you thought he or she was going to do, or the toddler, is different. Anyway, I just could not put this book down because it's so wonderful, and it has such great tips, and I know everybody that reads it, you know what, you may not follow everything, but I can guarantee you'll get an awful lot out of it, especially if you're an expectant parent, new parent, any parent. Excuse me. Anyway, I want to say good morning to Richard, and we have a few minutes before our break. So thank you so much for being on the show this morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on here, and I understand you live in Arizona, too.
I do, yes.
What do you think?
So, gosh, there's I'll just tell you, quickly, a lot of my research has been on depression and intergenerational risk for depression. So I've, over the years studied a lot of depressed moms, and, it's just so important to get treatment. And, it can take some time to find the right treatment that works, but when you find the treatment that works, it's amazing, and it can really, really change, dynamics of how you interact with your kids. And I don't know anything about this particular case, but the thought of depression just jumps to mind, and it's very common in women. It's very common in moms, and it's treatable and manageable.
I'm so happy you said that because nobody needs to be ashamed. If you're depressed, if you're sad, your new parent, whatever, don't ever, ever be ashamed to ask somebody for help because the help is out there. So I need to tell you that if I don't break for a commercial, my producer's going to be really depressed. So hey, stay here. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more Help My Baby Came Without Instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these. Homeschooling? Have questions? Get your pen and paper ready. It's the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Fridays at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com. After a handsome blue-eyed Texan fell in love with Vivian at the Victoria Station in London, she found herself at DFW Airport with a tiny suitcase and a snazzy little duffel bag. Well, 25 years later, she is now happily married to that blue-eyed cowboy. They have 4 grown children ages 24 to 18 who became willing guinea pigs when she unwittingly stumbled upon the world of homeschooling. Wildflower Academy flourished for 15 years. They survived and thrived, and you can too. Vivian will be covering a wide range of issues that face homeschoolers. What do you do with kids in the summer? How to set up your one-room schoolhouse? How obedience is paramount? And what to do with those snakes? Plus, you'll be sharing ideas and insights that she gleaned from other homeschoolers. So join us for an engaging hour with the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Friday afternoons at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
What in the world are you listening to, young man?
Oh, Mom, it's just a cool comedy radio show.
Well, it sounds much too adult-oriented for you, young man.
But it's PG-13 and it's about 6 super nerds having crazy adventures while they try to take over the world.
And you are only 12. Now go to your room and watch Nickelodeon or something.
Aw, Mom.
Now just what is this? Oh my God, that's funny. I've got to tell my friends about Paranoia Texas on TylerNet and TogiNet Radio Monday nights at 8 p.m. It's a show filled with outrageous adventure and hilarious attitude, but it's definitely rated PG-13. I love it.
Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions. If you're listening, today is a live show. It is 9/9/15, September 9th. And if you are listening to a podcast, that's great. You can listen to all my podcasts 24/7. If you go to toginet.com, they're on that site. They're on Stitcher.com, iTunes, and of course, go to My Best Parenting Advice. Go under radio, podcast. I've had terrific guests. You can always listen to a podcast. I love doing it when I'm at the gym, not my own program, the other programs. We have great ones. And if you have a question ever, you can contact me via my website. I always put all my guest information on there as well, so you can always contact them. So my guest this morning is Richard Rende, Raising Can-Do Kids, Giving Children the Tools to Thrive in a Fast-Changing World, and it sure is fast. So, Richard, tell my listeners, how did you get involved in this and writing this wonderful book with your co-author?
Well, I had been blogging for Parents Magazine for about 3 or 4 years when I started writing this book. And the idea of that blog was to get information to parents that comes from research. That's very real information for them. We're continuously learning new things in research. And also through blogging, you get to correspond and hear the opinions of a lot of parents. So I spent a lot of time, being able to digest the concerns they had. So the thing that made this book interesting to me, though, was that it's sort of a parenting book, but plus. And the plus is that I wrote it with an entrepreneur, Jen Prosek, and it gave us this longer-term vision of, sort of stepping back and saying, gosh, you have a 1-year-old, before you know it, they're going to be 30. What's the world going to be like for them? What kind of skills are they going to need to have? And as we started to think about, how quickly the world has changed in the last 5 years, I would say, for parents, who knows what that future is going to be? So we started to think about, so how do you raise kids to handle what's going to be something that's uncertain? And we locked into this idea that, they need to be entrepreneurial. They don't have to be entrepreneurs. We're not saying they're going to have to all start businesses, but are entrepreneurial in the sense of learning how to figure out who you are and what you're going to do in a world where it's up to you to think through those things. And Blythe, it actually, the clincher for me is that it was really converging with so many trends that parents have to deal with right now, and also really hooked up nicely with so much new research. So it was a kind of a complicated book to write, but I think stepping back from it, we felt like we learned a lot from the experience. We think parents will as well. Well,
there's so many things that we don't know, and like I said before, we think we're going to know what to do, and then you see this baby and you go, I thought they did this. I thought they slept all night. I thought they didn't cry. Or I thought my toddler, wasn't going to have terrible 3s, just 2s.
Right.
So it's interesting because at the beginning of your book, even in your introduction, you're going to talk about successful parenting and what's successful. I mean, what makes you successful? I see so many times where parents, the mom's still pregnant and she has her child signed up for preschool. Or,
right.
There's a waiting list, or you have to do this, you have to do that, and everything is so, not always, but some parents are so focused on college that they miss out being kids.
Yes.
They really
and we're sympathetic to this because, we see what's going on. We feel it. Jen, my co-author, is a parent. I'm a parent. And I think that's why we took on this book, that we all have this kind of collective pressure and a little bit of a collective fear, right? That if I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, I'm not doing well by my kid. And if I'm not doing these things and other parents are, they're, in essence being, if you will, better parents. And I think, it's not just us. There's a slew of opinions coming out right now that are saying, look, we have to change that thinking. First of all, it's not true. That kind of thing is not really what kids are going to need. But we have to give parents the confidence to know that, probably most of their instincts are going to be right. Spending time with your kid and playing with your kid and talking to your kid and trying to raise your kid to understand people and understand people's emotions and to be optimistic and to be, creative thinkers. We need that reassurance that all that stuff really is going to matter. And I think what's cool is that there's so much research coming out right now showing that, guess what, that stuff's even more important than we thought. But we wanted to make sure parents, more than anything, felt that confidence to say, I don't have to get on that express train. But the reality is we're not saying you have to, go completely retro. I don't think there's anything wrong with kids doing some structured activities, and it's certainly good to even be mindful of what their education is going to be like, but that shouldn't drive everything. That shouldn't be the totality. And I think that the paradox, and I'd be curious on your take on this, Blythe, is that the paradox is we're hearing so much now about overparenting, right? Parents are
Right.
overparenting. They're overstructuring their kids' lives. They're too involved. They're this, they're that. I don't think that's true. I think actually all that collective pressure is leading in a peculiar way almost to underparenting, in the sense that, what really matters is what you and your kid do together with your time. And we go through a lot of examples of, how you can really play with your kid and how you are really going to be a primary stimulus for their early critical thinking and problem solving and creativity, and they get it better from you than anybody else. So I hate this notion of just telling parents to back off. We don't want parents to back off. We want parents to be super involved with their kids, but in a way that's helpful for them, in a way that's authentic. And the cool thing from researchers, they spend all their time with kids. We just keep learning more. The more you learn about kids, the more fun it is and the more productive you can be when you spend your time with them.
It's funny because if you watch them, you learn so much and you see how they change, how they develop. I've taken care of over 1,000 families with babies and toddlers, and I've seen the gamut. And I always think about this one story where a mom was giving her baby a bath, and I said, just sing to him, have fun. You know what? Don't be so nervous.
Right.
He's fine. And she said, well, I don't know the words. And I said, well, neither does he. It doesn't matter. The sillier, the better.
Right.
And it's interesting because I run an infant room in a preschool, and I have a wonderful co-teacher in there, and she's a young girl, and she loves to do art. And we've done a couple art projects with these babies. They are 6 weeks to 12 months in my room. The babies that are closer to 10, 11, 12 months did this project, and it's so cute because she takes their shirts off and lets them finger paint. And the project was we put some paint on, and they got dirty, and then we folded the paper, and it looked beautiful, and we put a frame around it, and nobody told anybody what to do. And I was just so thrilled to watch these babies be able to be creative, even at 10, 11, 12 months old. And it didn't matter if they got dirty. Even if they had their shirt on, it would have come off. But parents sometimes are so worried about their kids getting dirty, or they don't know how to do this, or they won't bring it into their home. And like you said, play with them and do what works for you. Get messy. You can always clean it up.
Yeah. I think one of the things, though, that's hard for parents, and you've touched on this so nicely already today, and I know this is the work you do.
Thank you.
Parenting is this kind of funky thing, right? It's sort of in between a manual, because you can't. It's an old saying, but it's true. You can't have a manual that's going to tell you everything to do, because all kids are different, parents are different. But by the same token, I worry sometimes that the advice doled out, and you're clearly an exception to this, But I think just in general, right, or in the media, the advice that's doled out to parents isn't helpful. So, like one of the things we take on in the book early on is this idea of screen time, right? We keep hearing more and more about it. It's changed so dramatically over the last few years because of mobile devices, smartphones, and all that. And parents, if you're a parent and you have an 8-month-old baby, and you're on the one hand you're hearing, don't use screens at all. Screens are bad for babies. And on the other hand, you're hearing, there's all these amazing things that they can do to learn with them. Where does it leave you? So what we did was we talked a little bit about, and I'm not an extremist. I don't think it's going to destroy a baby's brain if they're playing with anything for a certain amount of time. I mean, the reality is they're probably learning more just by holding the phone and trying to bite it or trying to operate it, right? They're just manipulating. But we try to go through an example of when pediatricians and practitioners and other folks say, babies need face-to-face time. What we're trying to do is convince parents of why it's so important to get engaged and play with your baby, and those, peekaboo and all these things where you're face-to-face, because we go through this new science that shows how sophisticated the baby is in perceiving features of the face and how much it changes over the first year of life, how much they're learning, and how their scan patterns change from 3 months to 6 months to 9 months to 12 months, and all the information they're absorbing. And, they're absorbing language, they're absorbing, connecting this idea that sounds coming out of the mouth, they're starting to mean something to me, and they connect eyes and how you interact with people. There's all the social bonding. But what we're trying to do is sort of give parents, rather than, we certainly try to give a lot of tips and practical suggestions, but more than anything, we want a parent to sit there and say, okay, so if a baby's looking at my face and I'm engaged and we're playing and we're having fun, and that's just the basic thing we do, how much more are they learning from that than if you really let the screen time dominate their time? That's why the face-to-face is so important. And I think parents are so smart these days in the sense they're very sophisticated. They want to know things. I think we need to give them good information, and you know what? They'll have a platform to make more comfortable choices for themselves. But to be able to sit there and say, yeah, you know what? I know I should play with my kid, and I know it's an awesome time to play with my baby. But guess what? There's all this cognitive science that does say, you know what? This is going to matter.
You know what? Perfect way to a commercial. We will be right back. Stay with us.
We'll be right back with more help. For help, my baby came without instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these.
This is Uncommon Sense for Leaders, a forum for exploring leadership from the intellect, the heart, and the spirit. Whether you're a leader now or aspire to be a leader in the future, you owe it to yourself to learn about the big ideas that have shaped the careers of compelling communicators, masters of influence, and highly effective leaders. Uncommon Sense for Leaders. Tune in to hear thought-provoking ideas on every aspect of leadership. You can expect dynamic discussions with special guests, quick tips you can apply immediately for better results, and the tools you need to take you from where you are to where you want to be as a leader. Are you ready to crack the code for achieving unprecedented results? Then join the host for Uncommon Sense for Leaders, Catherine Carlisi, every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the All Business Radio Network.
It's words you never heard.
I just love the warning labels companies attach to their products to prevent lawsuits. Apparently, they think we're a bunch of blunderbusses and popinjays. Here are a few of my favorites. A warning label on a mattress said, "Do not attempt to swallow." In a manual for a chainsaw, "Do not attempt to stop the blade with your hand." On a toner cartridge for a laser printer, "Do not eat toner." What are we, part of the ridiculi? On a bag of chips, you could be a winner. No purchase necessary. Details inside. Now that seems a bit hooky-crooky, don't you think? On the other hand, a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle noted on the box, some assembly required. Now that's pricknickety or above board.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and Words You Never Heard has been brought to you by the Bariatric Surgery Center of Dallas.
Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions, and I am here with my wonderful guest, Richard Rende. He's the author of Raising Can-Do Kids, Giving Children the Tools to Thrive in a Fast-Changing World, and he wrote this book with Jen Prozac. Anyway, before the break, we were talking a little bit about screen time, and I have to say, you know, my books, you talked about manuals, and my books are Help My Baby Came Without Instructions, Help My Toddler Came Without Instructions, and while the book has instructions, it's not really instructions. There are tips, there's things that I've used over the past 35 plus years that I know work. Every single one of them works, but not every single one of them works for every child. So in saying that, you know, every family is different. And this issue of screen time is interesting because Richard said earlier on, usually if you listen to your intuition, parents are usually right with what works with them. And you can't be afraid. But I have to say, in our fast-changing world, as you have on the cover of your book and throughout the book, I have an almost 4-month-old grandson, and he loves watching the baby channel. And it does numbers, and it does colors, and it does music. But, you know, the thing that is so important is it's not an instead of.
That's right. That's it.
So do you think that, you know, this is a little baby, and they say not to do any screen time before 2 years old, but little Alex, I mean, he kicks his feet and giggles, and, you know, of course he's brilliant because he's my grandson, but do you think with the balance, and we're talking about balance here, do you think that it is important to give a little bit of screen time if you have a child that does like it when they're little? Do you think it's setting them up the wrong way or the right way?
Look, I think it's what you said, Blythe. It's the worry, and I think the recommendations that come down is that you don't want this time to be instead of something else, right? And that's the worry. And it used to be with television, the worry was what they called, you know, it was basically like background smoke.
Right.
You know, they made the analogy with secondhand smoke.
Oh,
right?
It's true.
That if that TV's just on all the time, it becomes intrusive, right? And it disrupts the flow. So I think if a baby is having plenty of that engaged time, and they really need that engaged time. And this is the worry now is because, you know, with all the mobile technology, it follows you everywhere. That engaged time used to be if you're pushing your baby in the stroller at the mall. But now if you have your phone and baby has a phone, you're taking that away. That engaged time used to be that if you're out to eat with your infant, and, you know, you have to work a little hard to keep them entertained, but guess what? That's engaged time, right? If you were talking to them, or older kids, if they have crayons or this or that, if everybody's on their phone, you know what I mean. So I think we have the reason they put such strict guidelines, and from my opinion anyway, is simply that you know I don't think anyone's going to follow those exactly, but it's trying to make the point of what is supposed to dominate your day. The fact of the matter is. And this is why what we mean by a fast-changing world and how it even impacts parents. You know, mobile technology has made this a very different sort of discussion. But to me, you know what? If you're covering your bases and you have all that engaged time, the fact is you're also not going to be playing with your baby 16 hours a day. I mean, who's going to do that?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's crazy. So, you know what? If they have the thing you mentioned, though, which is also really important, is the engagement factor. Right, that when you know, if you have the right thing on and the baby's super engaged, great. But what we don't want is these babies that are just zoning out, right, with just nonstop stuff. So again, it becomes balanced, but I do think it's become insidious And the forces are squeezing out more and more of those times where you didn't have a choice but to be engaged, if you will, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's what I worry about a little bit. I also worry a little bit about some of the messaging that, they're going to be learning so much from a video, and why not let them do something on a smartphone? And that's why, we go through that example of the face perception. We talk about how important conversation is and how it builds vocabulary like nothing else. We have to get rid of that myth that kids are going to be learning more from technology than they are from interacting with you. They could be learning additional things from technology. I don't know that we know that from research, and I think that's important for researchers, and I've been in research for decades. We have to say what we don't know, and this stuff is all so new. Nobody's done, sufficient studies to really show. But let's say, for sake of argument, yeah, they're probably getting something different out of that, and I don't see anything wrong with it. And if kids are enjoying it, fantastic. But set the priorities and make sure that you have those times where you're engaged, that real engaged play time. And if that's happening, and you know what, some of those times, make it harder on yourself. Take the phone away at the restaurant or in the mall and use that as just, because you're going to end up having fun and spending more and more interactive time. Is this resonating with you, Blythe?
No, it's. I'm thinking about your chapter on making your house a children's museum, and I'm thinking about the mall, because before everybody had this cell phone in their ear, the mall alone, or a store alone, is like a museum. And if you have a toddler, you can do colors, you can do numbers, you can do all kinds of things to interact with your toddler. Maybe you're busy getting something, but you know what? Take the time to engage. What your message is so important. I mean, it's interesting. If you go to the grocery store with your toddler, one of my favorite things to tell parents is cut some coupons out. And if your toddler is an older toddler, let's say 4 years old, 3 years old, give them the coupon and go down the aisle with the right aisle with them and ask them to pick out what's on the picture. I mean, that is, you get your shopping done, number one. You teach your toddler, and you're also giving them self-esteem that they need to help. So there's there's so many easy ways, like your chapter says, making your house a children's museum. And certainly if you have a children's museum where you live, I think it's so much fun to take kids to a museum, especially when they can touch and feel and do all kinds of things.
The Phoenix one is fantastic.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And we talk about it in the book some. And it really is a great model for, for how kids should be playing at the different early ages. And as you said, you can bring this stuff home. And again, this is the thing, though, that and I'm sympathetic to parents who are trying to shake everybody out of this notion that that's not just downtime. That is that they're learning so much from that they can't get anywhere else. We cannot give up that time with kids.
No, it's an up time.
We cannot squeeze that out of childhood and think that, well, if they're going to be doing math and advanced math at age 3 and this and that, that's all to the better. That's not how the baby's brain and child's brain and toddler's brain and even in middle childhood, it's not how the brain's wired. It's wired to do a lot of different things. And they need all of this naturalistic stimulation.
You know what I just love? If you have a toddler, don't tell your toddler, ask your toddler. Ask them what they think about something. You know what? If they say, I don't like this, ask them to tell you why. If you give them something to eat, say, why don't you like this? You will be so amazed how much you learn from toddlers, and some of it is so funny.
It really is.
It's so honest and so funny. If we were uninhibited like this through life, you know what? Maybe we wouldn't have all the things going on that are not so nice lately. I was going to ask you a question. What do you think, and this is opinion only, when do you think children should be involved with activities, soccer, t-ball, plays, whatever it is? I know it's all about balance. We all know we need to balance things, but when do you think? Do you think they should be involved at all before 5?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to think about. I mean, I think they can be fun, and I think they could be productive even before that. I would look for a couple of things, though, right? First of all, as you said, balance, number one. So whatever you think, you don't want your kids, life to be consumed by these things exclusively. So we're not against the activities, even at any age. You don't want them to be so booked up with them that you don't have that time, with them yourself. The things I'd look for, though, are they really active in them, right? So if you're doing a dance class and you're 2 years old, are the 2-year-olds really moving the whole time, right? Are they really engaged? If they are, it can be really fun, and it's not so much that they're learning dance at that age, it's that they're moving, and they're in a group, and they're learning a little bit about socialization, and that could be fantastic. What I don't like is if I see kids, and this is just opinion, right? But if I see 5-year-olds and they're doing, they're on a softball or baseball or whatever, team, and they're spending 90% of the time not doing anything.
But they don't like it, or they're crying and they don't want to go.
Yeah, it should be fun and it should be engaging. And that's the thing about it. And not so much what are they learning. They're going to learn this stuff plenty. There's going to be many opportunities. But here's an interesting thing, Blythe. Someone had shared this with me recently. A study from the National Alliance on Sports came out and said that 70 to 80% of kids give up organized sports by their mid-teens because they're not fun.
Huh? That's a lot.
It's a lot. And that's the type of train we don't want to put kids on, right? The goal is for them to, and I think they should sample a lot of different things too, If you're going to do activities, let them try a little of this and a little of this. Kids get burnt out over the years, and and it's not just sports. I mean, I've heard this anecdotally. I don't know if you have, but I have as a hobby. I'm a songwriter, and I'm always, and I didn't start playing guitar until I was in college, and it just we didn't do lessons when I grew up.
We're going to break for commercial in just a few seconds, so I want to hear this story.
Yes.
About this, but I also, when we come back, I want to talk to you about reframing failure for kids, because what parents so many times will say to their kids, and I've seen it, why didn't you play better? And why didn't you pay attention to the coach? And why didn't? It's never, you were great. Did you have a good time today? And that's what parents should be saying. So when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about that, but I want to hear about your songwriting. Maybe you'll sing to us.
No, that's not going to happen.
Anyway, stay with us. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more Help My Baby Came Without Instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these. If you could live your life truly standing in a place of peace, joy, and abundance, wouldn't that make your heart soar? Now you can, with Lessons in Joyful Living, with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi, Mondays at noon Central. Kimberly Rinaldi, having created a highly successful coaching practice, now teaches lessons in joyful living. She believes in empowering others and that through it, you have the ability to break through any and all barriers, thus allowing you to reach your greatest potential and joyfully step into your life's purpose. What used to take weeks, months, or even years, she can now teach you in a matter of hours with her programs. For more on Kim and her show, go to her website, KimberlyRinaldi.com. That's RINALDI.com. Then join us for Lessons in Joyful Living with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Nuts are an overall good choice for snacking. Almonds are my favorite nut, and I try to include them in my daily eating. Almonds have more calcium than any other nut. They are low in carbs, but high in fiber and protein. Studies show that eating almonds and other nuts will give you a feeling of fullness longer and help you eat fewer calories throughout the day. 12 almonds are under 100 calories and very satisfying. Peanuts are another good choice. Health Magazine says that like most other nuts, peanuts are also full of brain-boosting healthy fats and vitamin E as well. 1 ounce of peanuts, about 28 unshelled nuts, contains about 170 calories, 7 grams of protein, and 14 grams of fat. Eating nuts helps your brain power and reduces inflammation. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. Like us on Facebook.
Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions. We were up to the last part of the show. This goes so quickly. We have to have Richard Rende, the author of Raising Can-Do Kids, Giving Children the Tools to Thrive in a Fast-Changing World. I mean, this is such an important topic. And before the break, I think you said you were going to sing to us, or did I misunderstand?
You misunderstood that.
Okay. Well, you were going to...
Very quick. No, very quick.
You were going to tell us a story about... We were talking about the negative...
Yeah, just look, here's the thing. So I started playing guitar when I was in college. And the thing for me is that it was just because I wanted to do it, and it was fun. And what was interesting to me, so, I was like, gosh, it might have been nicer to have taken lessons when I was younger or whatever. And I started to talk to so many people, that are 18, 19, this is back when I was in college, who had lessons, whatever it was, piano, guitar, violin, throughout their childhood. And the first thing that happened, now I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, that must be great. You must be playing all the time. And they're like, that's the last thing I want to do. It's like that sometimes, and I'm not against lessons, but, I think we have to look at what kids like and what they're taking to. And if we just force them to do something or make something obligatory or feel obligatory, you squeeze the pleasure out of it. That's true. That's just the point of that story. And that's what, you're talking about. How do you know if a kid should do this activity or that activity? Are they enjoying it? It's childhood. You're trying to cultivate a taste for doing things. And part of that is a pleasure principle.
It's so true, because I took piano lessons for 12 years. And you know what? I hated to practice. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, because now I wish I had paid more attention, because it's great to do something you love, and I love music as well. But anyway, it has to be fun, like everything else. Don't push your kids. If they don't like it, you know what? It doesn't make you a failure as a parent. And don't you think it only makes your child feel worse, because you tell, some parents will say, I don't know why you can't do that. They don't listen to their words before they come out of their mouth. And I'm not putting parents down, because we all want our children to be happy and, with what they're doing.
Right. But it's not so much about becoming good at something that age. It's about learning that there are things that give you pleasure. And when you have that pleasure principle, that's the motivation to then say, hey, I want to learn more about it.
It's true. And you know what? And sometimes we do go back to it as adults. So that's really good. Before we go on with more discussion about this, can you tell my listeners where to find your book, where to find you if they want you to be a speaker?
Yes. So in terms of the book, there's a link on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way to get it. It's also available through most of the major bookstores. If you go online and just Google Raising Can-Do Kids, it'll also come up with a website from the publisher where you can link to buy it. And in terms of the Arizona area, I serve as Director of Curriculum and Instruction at the Phoenix Country Day School. It's a school that is embracing, I think, the idea of trying to help our students, our parents, our faculty, all of us at the school, the highest bar possible for kids. And that, though, doesn't mean that we're driving them into the ground. It means that we really are giving them the foundation for finding their success and excellence. And part of that is their personal motivation and love of learning and joy of experience. And that's so important developmentally over the years.
It is, and you say in your book, focus on the process and not the outcome. And that is such a true sentence.
Yes. I mean, look, I was a researcher at medical school for many, many years. And as a researcher, if you're just focused on the outcome, you better find a different way of making a living. Because in research, outcomes don't happen real quick.
No, it's true. And how many people do you talk to and they hate their jobs? Right.
And if we're looking for that pat on the back and that, instantaneous gratification and a reward, when you're a researcher, that doesn't happen. You're taking on complex stuff. You're taking on the unknown. You're going to be trying, and, we don't use the word failure. You're going to be experimenting.
That's such a better word.
You learn something.
Exactly.
And the key thing, we talk so much about failure and, that kids don't get a chance to fail, and now they need to fail. Well, I don't think that's a good way to frame it, because inherently, if you simply just fail, that doesn't mean it's a growth experience. And I think you have to just so we took this idea of talking to entrepreneurs, and none of them use the word failure. It's not failure. It's process. It's learning. It's trying. It's experimenting, and it's iterative. And they're like, I didn't get it until my fifth try. I mean, we talked to very successful people who, spent 10 years trying to figure something out, and all of a sudden it clicked. And it's like, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't, in quotes, fail 100 times. But they know what that is. They know each time they try something, it's information, and they get something out of it. So you get both the confidence to keep going, but you also understand that that's how you're going to be successful. And I think we have to really, really embrace that for kids and
I love
invest in that process.
I love that word, that we don't say failure. You know what? Experiment is so much better. Remember, as parents, you're the best example. Your children watch you. And if you don't get something right the first time and you try it 3 more times, you're teaching them it's okay. You know what? Maybe they'll get it the 3rd time. And that's okay, as long as they're having a good time doing it, or, they need some help with something. I love that you say that, because that word should not be in the vocabulary. Because I don't think it's not a failure, and it's so bad for self-esteem, especially with these little ones. When you've had a day and you're frustrated and your child doesn't do something, and you yell at him and you say, why are you a bad boy? Bad and failure and all those negative words. I know we all have those days, but sometimes just to stop, you can't take them back. You can't go back when your kids are 2 and say, I want to do over and I wish I had. So, take a breath. Like I said in the beginning of the show, you can always ask for help if you're having a bad day. But anyway, let me ask you, do you have a favorite parenting tip? I know you have a daughter.
Yeah, I think this is going to sound super obvious, but unless you've parented for a number of years, sometimes those obvious things are the things that stay out with you. Really, really, really try to get to know your kid and embrace who your kid is. Because, so much of our time we think about what's important to us, or what's important in the world, or what's important for this and that. And really, your kid has the magic in them as a unique individual. And, it's funny, that's one of the things that came out when we talked to entrepreneurs, because all of them at some point in time said, you know what, I'm going to find this thing that only I can do. And everybody has that thing. And whether it's somebody, someone running a restaurant, we talked to a guy who runs a restaurant in Chicago, but he found this way of doing it that was unique for him. And when that clicks in, you become a very happy person. You usually become successful, too. But I think, we worry so much about our kids, which is good, and we try to push them, which is good. But sometimes we kind of lose that sense of, like, who are they? What are they experiencing?
That advice is worth $1 million. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think I've just found that to be so important.
It's worth $1 million, because all children are different. They're all different. Some are more creative. Some love math. Some love writing, and all of it is wonderful and okay. And it's interesting, because I was reading the business section of the New York Times on Sunday, and they were interviewing a CEO of a big company, and he said, "What do you ask your applicants?" And one of the questions was, "What would you do, or what would you change if you had my job?" And I can only imagine all the different answers he received.
Right. Right.
And,
it's
you
true.
know, it's so important to just embrace who your child is, because it's all wonderful. And just because, little Johnny down the street, likes green beans, but your child doesn't, it doesn't make anything wrong with that. It's okay.
Yeah, and I want to loop back to something you said earlier, which is how do you find that out? By observing them, but really by talking to them. And it's so fun to really just, engage them and hear their opinions and hear what they think and hear what they feel, and just as a conversationalist, and almost like you're interviewing them, because that's what researchers do. That's how we learn a lot about kids. And it becomes fascinating. You end up stepping back, and you really start to sort of get this conception at all the different ages of, well, wow, this is who my kid is. And sometimes they change a lot over time. They're going to surprise you. But it just brings a pleasure principle. But I think if you use that as your guidepost, you're going to end up being the best support for your child and mentor, and you're going to know how to best help them succeed over time.
Well, what a great way to end the show. Unfortunately, we're at the end, and I would love to have you come back. This was Richard Rende, Raising Can-Do Kids, giving children the tools to thrive in a fast-changing world. And I do want to say one more thing before I say goodbye to you. Your advice is right on the money, and when you talk to your kids, if they're little or no matter what age they are, if they say something that just blows your mind, write it down. You're not going to forget it, and I can tell you mine are grown up. And when you sit around and reminisce when they were little and you pull this little book out and you tell them all the funny things they said, there's nothing better than family memories and talking about when they were little, so write them down. Anyway, Richard, thank you so much for being my guest. You're wonderful. I would love to have you come back, and you have a great day. Looks like we're going to get some rain here in Arizona, maybe at least for 3 minutes.
Yeah, we'll take it.
All right, take care.
Thanks for having me on, Blythe. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, what a great guest with so many wonderful tips. I just love it. Next week, I have another great guest. You know what? Her name is Kelly McConnell. She's the co-owner of a wonderful company called Prince Lionheart. We're going to be talking about everything from teething to child-proofing and so much more. Please remember to like my pages on Facebook, My Best Parent Advice and Baby Instructions. Follow me on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest and LinkedIn and Google. And if you're a Twitter person, look up Periscope. I've been doing some short little videos with my favorite tips. So I would like to leave you today with a little humor from a funny site called Rotten Cards. Dear mother-in-law, please don't tell me how to raise my kids. I live with one of yours, and he sure could use some help. And, Mom used to bake cookies with me. Now she's too busy playing Candy Crush. So I'm raising myself. That's really sad. And finally, I adore the curiosity, wonder, and sweetly inquiring the voices of childhood. Just not before 6 a.m. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.